Hi everyone, my name is Reverend Sam Ithiga. I'd like to welcome you to today's episode of T.A.G, Time Alone with God. I was reading Matthew chapter 7 the other day, and I saw something interesting there on what Jesus said in verse 24. Allow me to read it to you. It just says that, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the stream rose, and the wind blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall. Why? Because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the stream rose, the wind blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. It's like Jesus is saying, there are only two kinds of people: wise man and the foolish man. Who is the wise man? The wise man is the one who hangs on the words of Jesus. The man who takes Jesus so seriously, and he follows Jesus, and he says what Jesus does what Jesus is saying. But the foolish man doesn't take Jesus seriously. Yeah, both of them hear Jesus, but he doesn't quite put Jesus' words into practice. It's like, that's a foolish man. And I thought about this, and I found it to be very interesting, because that's not how we look at it today. You know, those people who hang on Jesus' words, those people who take Jesus seriously and they follow him, these are the people the world calls foolish. You know, the people who they sort of choose their own path. The people who they are the captains of their own destinies, if I may put it like that. These are the wise guys. Yet it appears as if at the end of the age, when we will all be called to stand before the Creator, our Maker, the perspective will be different. The ones who the world says were foolish, it will be seen they were wise. Those who were strutting about thinking that they were wise, and the ones who will be shown to be foolish. I thought it was interesting that the foolish man, he builds his house on the sand. And of course we know no one in their right minds today can build their house on the sand, you know. And yet it appears as if God, who is outside of us, who's looking down from heaven, is able to see some of the decisions we make, and he knows, oh, for you, you don't know you're building on sand, but for him, seeing things from God's perspective, he can see, oh, that's like building on the sand. That's foolishness. Foolishness today is believing in Jesus Christ. But in the end of the age, it will be shown to be the wise thing. And so this is an encouragement to Christians. You know, the foolish man may come up to you. I'm talking about the foolish man in the end of the age who walks around today like the wise guy. You know, he may walk up to you and sort of make you feel insecure, may challenge your convictions and your worldview and say, you know, I think you Christians are a little bit narrow-minded. I don't like the idea of, you know, being stuck on one place. What do you mean, build on the rock? That's very restrictive. You know, I want some leg room. I'm sort of like a free spirit myself. I want freedom. You know, this whole being grounded on one place, it's very restrictive. Or they might say something like, you know, what do you mean deny yourself? I find that to be a bit narrow. You know, let's allow some freedom here. You can do whatever you want. That's the sort of life that I want. Deny yourself, pick up the cross. That's not for me. Why would I want to deny myself? You know, because that's how people look at Christianity, you know. Or they might say something like, Jesus Christ is the only way. Really? Like, just one guy. He is the only way to God, the only way to heaven, the only way to be saved. Nah, I kind of don't like that idea. I find it to be too narrow. I want more freedom, more choice. I can choose whichever way I want, you know. And quite honestly, whenever you're having conversations with these worldly wise guys, you sort of feel foolish. As a Christian, you sort of feel ashamed of your position. But this is what Christ says to us, in encouragement. And allow me to read verse 18 of the same Matthew 7. Christ will say this. He will say, enter through the narrow gate. Can you imagine? I thought that those words were really timely, because Christians are normally, dissed as narrow-minded. Christ says, just take the narrow gate. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction. You see this wide gate and broad road, anything goes. Hey, you want to experiment sexually? Yeah, this road is wide enough to accommodate that. Hey, you don't like your gender, and hey, please, you can try out whatever you want to try out. You don't have to leave anything outside. That's the broad road. That's the wide gate, and it leads to destruction. That's what Christ says. And many enter through it. There is a good company along that road. There is a crowd. There is the comfort of numbers. But verse 14, he says this, but small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. This gate is small, the road is narrow, it leads to life, and only few people find this road. Indeed, Christianity is narrow if you do not want to leave anything behind. You will find Christianity to be narrow if you want to do whatever you want to do, and you don't have to deny yourself. But if you will become a Christian, Christ will say of you, put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires. Hey, you can't be a Christian and you disobey God, so to speak. It will call upon you to let go of some things. And many people don't like that. That's why they call it narrow. They call it foolish. They call it restrictive and so on. And many Christians, would feel ashamed about it. So what an encouragement today to know that Christ knows about this. What an encouragement for us to then look ahead and see how Christ will reverse everything at the end of the age. We who are called foolish today will be seen to be wise tomorrow. Those who are walking about, as the wise guys, they will come to see the truth. And the truth is, the fear of God really is the beginning of wisdom. And allow me to close with the words of Paul. Paul will say something like this in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18. He will say, the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but for us who are being saved, it is the power of God. Hear that? It is foolishness. The message of the cross to those who are perishing. And then he will continue to say in verse 27, he will say, but God chose the foolish things of this world to shame the wise. He chose the weak things to shame the strong. He chose the lowly things, the despised things, the things that are not, to nullify the things that are, so that nobody could stand and boast before him. Friends, at the end of the age, we will all stand before the King. And we will be forced to look at things from his perspective. And I tell you, nobody will be able to stand before him and say, me, I was more of a free spirit. I sort of liked freedom. I found the Christian way and the words of Jesus to be very restrictive, and so I chose my own path, sir. Well, that won't fly. God will say, here, I know about that, but I chose the foolish things. What did you do about that? We will be forced to look at things from God's perspective. And so the question for you today is, are you looking at things from God's perspective, regardless of what the world would say? Oh, Christian, be encouraged. Hold on to this narrow gate, to this narrow path. At the end of the day, it is the path that will lead to life. Let us stay to it. Let us stick to it until the very end. Amen? I hope you're encouraged by those words. For T.A.G, this is Sam. Peace. I'm out.